The average life expectancy in Bronze Age Greece was around 35 years. Now here's a Bronze Age Greek, Sophocles. He wrote his last play at 89. Plato died at 80. Isocrates at 98. Cato the Elder at 85. These aren't miracles or exaggerations carved by flattering scribes. This was ordinary. So, how does a society where men routinely live into their 80s produce an average lifespan of 35? The answer is buried in who's being counted. To understand it, we have to go back to a shop in London. In 1662, a haberdasher named John Graunt started reading the Bills of Mortality, weekly lists of the dead, posted publicly so wealthy Londoners would know when to flee a plague outbreak. People glanced at them for danger. Nobody had ever sat down and added them up. Graunt did. For years alone, in his spare time, what he published became the first mortality table in human history. It made him the founder of demography and got him elected to the Royal Society, a shopkeeper sitting among gentlemen scientists. And inside his table was one number that has distorted how we see the past ever since. Of every 100 children born in London, 36 were dead before their 6th birthday. 36%. Gone before school age. Now do the arithmetic that Graunt's successors did. Take a village of 10 people. 3 of them die as infants at 0 years old. The other 7 lived to 70. Add it up. 3 zeros and 7 70s divided by 10. The average life expectancy of that village is 49. But nobody in the village died at 49. Nobody came close. Everyone either died at birth or lived to old age. The average describes a person who never existed. That's what life expectancy at birth actually is. It isn't a prediction of how long you'll live. It's a single number smeared across 2 completely different populations. The enormous number of people who died as children, and everyone who made it past them. And for almost all of human history, the first group was very large. The record confirms it in the ground. Archaeologists excavating medieval English cemeteries find the same distribution over and over. At Warham Percy, a deserted village in Yorkshire excavated across 4 decades. Roughly a third of the burials are children, infants clustered near the church walls. Some graves so small they were nearly missed. And then, in the same soil, the others, adults in their 60s, their 70s, skeletons with the worn joints and healed fractures of long lives. What's thin in the middle is the 35s. This pattern holds across sites, across centuries, across continents. 2 clusters and a valley between them. Death was concentrated at the very beginning of life, and then again at the end, with a long stretch of relative safety in between. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups find the same shape. Among the Hadza of Tanzania and the Ach of Paraguay, roughly a fifth of children die before their first birthday. But a Hadza who survives to 15 has a very good chance of reaching 68. So the average was never lying. It was just answering a question. Nobody was asking. But here's what that arithmetic hides. Behind the number is a fact about ordinary life that's almost impossible to hold in your head now. For 300,000 years, burying your own children was not a tragedy. It was a stage of parenthood. A woman in medieval England might give birth 8 times and raise 4 adults. Not because something went wrong. That was the expected outcome. Roman families named children on the 8th or 9th day after birth, and some historians argue the delay existed because so many didn't reach it. Montaigne, writing in the 16th century, mentioned in passing that he had lost 2 or 3 children in infancy. 2 or 3. He wasn't certain of the count. That's not coldness. That's what it looks like when grief is that common. And the causes weren't dramatic. Not war, not famine, not plague. Those came in waves and killed adults too. The everyday killer was diarrhea, contaminated water, measles, whooping cough. Infections that meant nothing in an adult body and were fatal in a small one. Childhood was the dangerous part. Once you cleared it, your body was as durable as yours is now. So the obvious conclusion writes itself. Modern medicine saved us. Antibiotics, vaccines, hospitals. We conquered the killers and the number climbed. But that reading gets the sequence wrong. Life expectancy in Britain had already begun its long rise by the mid-19th century, decades before antibiotics existed, before germ theory was widely accepted, before vaccines beyond smallpox. Penicillin wasn't in general use until the 1940s. The curve was climbing well before it arrived. What was happening instead was less impressive and far more effective. Cities built sewers. In 1858, the smell of untreated waste in the Thames became so overwhelming that Parliament could not sit. The Great Stink. And London funded Joseph Bazalgette to construct 80 miles of main sewer beneath the city. Water was filtered and eventually chlorinated. Milk was pasteurized. Food supplies became reliable enough that children entered infections already well fed. None of it was a cure. All of it was plumbing, refrigeration, and soap. The single greatest extension of human life in recorded history was achieved mostly by moving human waste away from human drinking water, which means the number didn't change because we learned to keep old people alive. It changed because we stopped losing so many at the start. And this is the part that gets skipped. The maximum human lifespan has barely moved. A body that reaches adulthood today runs for roughly the same number of years as one that reached adulthood in Bronze Age Athens. The oldest people in the ancient record were in their 90s. The oldest people now are in their 90s, with a handful of outliers past it. We did not extend the end of life. We removed a filter at the beginning. Every person you know is standing on the other side of a gate that used to kill a third of everyone who approached it. You cleared it. Your parents cleared it. Almost everyone you have ever met cleared it, which is exactly why it's invisible. And it stayed invisible in the statistic, too. When someone says people used to die at 30, they're describing a world where adults dropped dead in their prime. That world never existed. The real one was stranger and sadder. A world of 80-year-olds who had buried 3 of their children, walking past a churchyard full of graves too small to need a full-size stone. The number was always accurate. What was wrong was the picture we built out of it. So the next time you see a chart of human lifespan climbing steeply upward, remember what's actually moving on that line. It isn't old age arriving. It's childhood becoming survivable. Sophocles wrote at 89. Plato died at 80. They lived in a world that averaged 35, and neither of them would have found that strange. They knew who the missing years belonged to.